Well, good morning, everybody. I wanted to start off. I'm in Sacramento today, and as I flew in last night, it's kind of one of the amazing privileges that my job affords me. Is I get to see ag all over the world. And as I was flying in to Sacramento, this is just so very different from the way that we do things in the Midwest. But I believe I'm looking down on some of the fields growing rice in the Central Valley or the Sacramento Valley in Northern California, and it's pretty impressive just to kind of get in here and see the flood irrigation techniques used in this area. And this, of course, would be the interstate here, and it's just amazing to kind of have a look and just see the differences. Of course, the Central Valley of California is one of the most fertile places on Earth for growing crops. And what its Mediterranean climate is what makes it so incredible for growing different fruits and vegetables and other crops. In fact, just so you know, California leads the nation in the production of over 40 different fruits and vegetables. And it's just kind of amazing to think that through. I did take one more picture on approach, just look at some of the water management techniques in this area. But I also wanted to point out there are this white migratory bird. I didn't get a chance to even look it up, but all these white dots you see here are these birds. So it's just impressive to kind of see that in some of these fields. Okay, the action is not in the west. The west is being occupied by a massive ridge of high pressure, way different from the end of December and the beginning of January. And now all the action is really going east. And I just want to show you some satellite data, or excuse me, some radar data from early this morning, starting late last night, of the system that's currently rolling through the northeast. Now, on radar, we can see some very intense lake effect snow. And if you didn't see some of the news reports last night, right around South Bend, this band went right over, we call this a shore parallel band, went right over the top of South Bend, producing snowfall rates that were, 2, 3, maybe even 4 inches an hour. Some of that snow early this morning, so this would be lake effect and lake enhanced, has made it all the way into Ohio and West Virginia. So you can get these lake effect bands moving pretty far. Many across this area got snow squall alerts. In fact, my son, who's 13, almost got in trouble in school yesterday because his phone went off in his pocket as the snow squall alert started blaring on his cell phone. But thankfully the teacher understood because the teacher's phone was going off as well. But anyways, this is the current system moving through, and we're going to see quite a bit of this in the coming days because behind all of this has been some pretty impressive Arctic air, and this is just the first of many shots of very, very cold air that are coming through. Now, as you see here, this is the 24-hour temperature change map. We've started to see this much, much colder air make it all the way to the Gulf Coast and almost to the East Coast, with temperatures 20 to, in some places, over 30 degrees colder than they were yesterday. But just taking a look here at the early morning temperatures, it's about 3:30 a.m. where I am, but 5:30 at home. You can see, boy, it's chilly. So get used to this in this area. This is going to be on repeat for several days in a row here as we finish this month of January, which we just began the second half of. Now, in addition to that, so you can see the lake effect, you can see the freeze warnings that are out way far down here in parts of the southeast, including Florida. We do have incredibly strong winds that are in parts of the upper Midwest, getting over toward the northern plains and eventually into the Canadian prairie as well. And these winds would be, I think, more welcomed if we could get them over into the northwest. Of course, we don't want them this strong, but it would be nice to knock out this air stagnation issue we're dealing with here. But I'm expecting these winds to be quite ferocious. We've seen high wind watches and warnings issued. Red flag warnings. We've already seen very large wildfires this winter in this part of Colorado as well. So we just need to be aware of what this is going to do. So this is just the next system, and there's the next front. Here's the one that just cleared through the eastern seaboard, and I do want you to pay attention to this. So we now have a wind going through the Tejano Pass, and it is getting out here into this part of the East Pacific. And a lot of times when we see this tells us that in winter we've had a frontal boundary push all the way through the Gulf, and what this means is this is introducing more cold air farther and farther to the south. Now I bring that up because with these shots at colder air, we do need to have a discussion in a few minutes about the potential for some snow in this area. Of course, it's going to be here and into the northeast, but it's going to be this questionable area down in the southeast that I want to have a closer look at by doing a multi-model analysis here in just a few moments. The west, though, all of the storm systems are curling up here because of a large ridge that's building in this area. We talked quite a bit about it yesterday, but I'll show you the latest data in a few moments. But I want you to get a glimpse of these winds, because as we play through today into tomorrow and get ourselves out to tomorrow evening, we're going to be watching for the risk of some of these wind gusts being over 70 miles an hour And we've already seen, again, this particular region deal with very, very strong winds. Now, they've come from all different directions this winter. We've seen very strong southerly winds in this region. We've seen these downslope winds that have been extremely dry and very strong. And now these winds are coming almost straight out of the north as they rip through this area very, very soon. All right, so we're going to keep a very close eye on what's happening here. Okay, I want to flip over to this, though, and then I'm going to come back to that particular view of things. Because what I'm anticipating is what we talked about yesterday, watching this ridge just creep its way farther and farther into the Arctic with time. So we kept an eye yesterday on this 540 line. Again, that being a useful metric to delineate rain versus snow. In other words, mild versus very, very cold. And just watch, okay? What I'm keeping an eye on is some sort of, we call it like an Arctic bridge. That's one of the phrases we often use. And anytime we push very mild air here and mild air there, there's just one option for it to go, and it just comes driving into this section of North America. Now, here we are on Friday, working our way out into Saturday and Sunday. You can just see the continual establishment of colder air in this area, multiple Arctic waves coming through, and I'll keep showing you those in a moment. But what I'm really interested in is once we get into Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. So here it is. That's Monday, and into Tuesday. It's what goes on with the typical Arctic low that can form over the Arctic this time of year, this guy right here. Because as you can take note of, we're watching this kind of squeeze in from Scandinavia, and it's also squeezing in from Alaska, and let's just see where it goes. Now, yesterday's model runs took that thing right through the Canadian archipelago. It's right here, eventually through North and Central Canada, reinforcing the flow around a deep Hudson low, which is there. And what I'm watching for is around the 23rd and 24th, how this could possibly pivot and bring in that southwest flow. Now, again, this is not true southwest flow like we can get during an El Nino, which comes from the subtropical jet. You're just seeing, a highly, look at this, bridging. I'm curious. Let me just play a little farther. Wow. What I'm looking for is, can we get these two 540 lines to touch? I mean, I don't see this very often. And in fact, let's do this. Let's look at the 500 millibar sigma. So we are, when looking at standard deviations, 3 plus, approaching 4 standard deviations above the mean, which is, you're talking about record territory here in terms of the ridging happening across the Arctic, unleashing this cold air into this region. And what I'm curious about is the coupling between the troposphere and the stratosphere with this. So sure enough, if you watch, okay, this is an animation of now we're deep in the stratosphere, but we're looking at the polar vortex, which a piece of it is here now and a piece of it is there. Okay, so it's kind of broken in two now. But as I play through, let's get Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We're talking about, we got to get out past the 18th, 19th, and 20th. There we go. Look at that. 22nd, 23rd, 24th. Yes, this will definitely be a coupling between the stratospheric polar vortex and the tropospheric vortex. This is going to bring in a lot of cold air into this region. So going to be plenty to be watching here in the very near term. Now, speaking of near term, let's get this queued up for about this morning here. We're going to watch one system exit with lake effect snow on the backside. We're then going to see another clipper roll through parts. This will be later today. So the strong winds are here, but out ahead of it, cold air, snow squalls coming through. The potential for some accumulating snow here is high, as even though it's moving fast, we're going to get some quick hitting snow. And then as we play this forward, watch that low into early Friday morning curl up over the Great Lakes. And we start to see the chances of snow emerging in Kentucky and Tennessee with rain, maybe some storms farther to the south and west. This is Friday at 9 p.m. And then the big question is going to be going into the weekend, as that colder air just wraps itself up around the Great Lakes. Does it get far enough into this region to begin to increase the chances for some snow down there? So to see that, I'm going to flip from the NAM over to the European model. We're just going to use the new mapping system and have a look at these things. Okay, so let's play this out. Now this goes in 6-hour steps rather than the 1-hour steps the NAM does. And here we are getting into Friday morning, Friday afternoon and evening. And then what I'm going to keep an eye on, see there's the snow. It's also in the European, just as we saw a moment ago. Maybe some ice potential in here too. What we see is right here. Now watch. That front has cleared. When is it? It's Saturday evening. And the snow is moving into the northeast. There we go. And then here's what we're going to watch. Along that front is there the potential for some accumulating snow anywhere in this vicinity. Now the models are different. This is the European. But there you can start to see, again, the risk of some of that snow showing up down here. We're going to look at just how much in a moment. But what's happening behind this? Well, on Sunday, there's another clipper system rolling through right in the same spot. More snow squalls, more heavy snows, more strong winds. And this is just going to roll into the northeast. What will be important to watch is how close to the coast on Sunday afternoon and evening is this next low to deliver some precipitation here from parts of North Carolina, which could see some snow through this section of Virginia, Delaware, Maryland, and up the East Coast. All right, so there it goes. Now, following this, that is one of the multiple Arctic highs that's going to come through. And on the back side of it, there is going to be a return of moisture to Texas. So as we're waiting for the setup of the system that's coming way out of the Canadian archipelago, which is now getting into here, okay, we do need to keep an eye on the coast of Texas and Louisiana. We talked about this yesterday. It's been a consistent feature. There's some rain coming early next week. This is Wednesday, I should say midweek next week, Wednesday into Thursday. But now what we're going to keep an eye on is this. Here we go. This is now the 23rd, the 24th, the 25th, and the 26th and 7th. So you see that when that trough comes rounding the base, here it comes, we're going to watch for these systems to start to blow up here. Now, do we know the true position of this low and its depth? Because right now there's actually just a frontal boundary. There's just so much high pressure here and so much high pressure there that you're getting this and squeezing the atmosphere. And you're going from rain to freezing rain to snow. So we don't see a very well-defined deep low-pressure center forming at this stage. But there's a follow-up one too. And the concern here comes around precipitation type. So I'll go ahead and show you the full model run just to do it. But let's look first at the ice. So let's see if we can get these frames to load. I love this trip I'm on because I'm testing very slow internet at these hotels. And it loads respectably. But let's just see how much ice is in the forecast. Hey, take a look down here. We do have the potential for some mix of precip in Georgia and South Carolina with ice on the first system. Again, this is the one coming through, this weekend. So there it is. Watch it again. This would be Sunday night, it looks like. Now, what I'm keeping an eye on is I keep playing. There we go. This is now the lead wave on Saturday the 24th. You can start to see some of these ice accumulations here. And as we go into the 25th and 6th, that next system, we just need to be aware that this is a potential. And I couldn't tell you if right now it's going to be here and concentrating there, if it's going to be a bit farther to the north and moving this. I don't know, but we just need to understand that it shows up in the forecasts. Let's flip this over from ice just to total snowfall. Again, this is going to use a 10-to-1 ratio on the total amount of snow. And we're watching this early this morning. Let's just play forward through to see what these next couple of clippers do. So that's just through the 19th. And again, more lake effect. We're looking at 3 to 5 inches of snow here in Wisconsin, much heavier amounts coming into this part of Manitoba and Ontario. And then right through that very common corridor for heavier snow. Now, if you come down here to the southeast, let's zoom in on that again. This is the forecast from the Euro. Let's get the timing on it. So this is Sunday morning, right there, through the day on Sunday, for the chances some accumulating snows. We're not looking at a lot. This is, you can see kind of the hover there, 1-2 inches possible. It's going to be slushy. It's going to be a bit of a mess and a mix, but we just need to stay aware of that. Now, what isn't understood is where the snow is going to be with this system that comes through again, the 22nd through the 26th. So here's the 22nd, watch Montana. Then we watch the plains on the 25th. We likely see some heavy snow move through this area. Now, could it be here? Yes, all of that is still a possible shift in the track of this upcoming system, but we just need to be aware of the potential for all of this to come through and then gather itself into the northeast. Okay. From there, let's go ahead and look at, we looked at winds a moment ago. I think what I'd like to just have one quick look at is total precipitation. So let's just see who's not receiving rainfall in this particular situation or any moisture according to the European model. Then we'll dig back into that snow. And this is what we see. All right. Now, up until 192 hours from now, so all the way to next Thursday, so much of the plains is out of this. The west is way out of this. And this is just this tropical thing. I think it might have tropical nature to it coming up here, and you can see the rain down along the Gulf Coast. But that next system, again, the 23rd, 24th, 25th, we just start to see that maybe it's in through this corridor, and then definitely in through here up to the northeast that seems to have the best chances of getting quite a bit of precip. Now it goes out 300 hours. So we're very skeptical. This is still 9 to 10 days away in forming, and it's it hasn't even really showed up yet in the Arctic. We have to watch the thing form in the Arctic first. Okay, I mentioned snow. Don't forget on agweather.com, when you go to the weather maps, you can see 5 different models and their snowfall forecast. I'm going to pull out the longer range. We're going to leave the NAM out of this and just to show you the differences in the southeast, because we looked pretty closely at the rest of the country. Here's the 7-day forecast total for the European. You already saw that. But here is the AIFS, and it is not. An artificial intelligence model is not showing snow in this area. This would be the GFS, which is much more aggressive on these areas in the interior on getting snow. So do you see the difference here? The European's putting it along the coast, and the GFS is not. It's got it much farther into the interior. So it's just kind of you're saying, well, Eric, this is only a couple of days away. I understand, but we don't have a sense on exactly what's going to come up along that frontal boundary as the Arctic air gets into this region. So that's going to be the trouble with trying to figure this out. The blend of models, you can generally see a 1 to 2 inch event, in through here, and then heavier into this area with the coastal regions, chances of picking up something. So I want to do 2 things as we wrap up this discussion on snow. The first thing is, let's look at some probabilities. So this is the chance at getting 1 inch. That's it, because that's the kind of amounts we're looking at down here. As we play it forward through Thursday into Friday, now into Saturday, now watch. Going from Saturday into Sunday, here it is. This is the chance at getting 1 inch. And you can see that the European model definitely prefers the more coastal corridor here. It's got up to a 40 to parts of North Carolina, 60% chance of getting 1 inch of snow out of this. Now, if I step it up to 3 inches, it goes almost completely away. And if I just keep going, 6 and 12, well, maybe not so much 12, but 6, through the next 4 days here, definitely going to be into this corridor. Now, beyond that, let me just take this out. Let's go ahead and take it all the way out, 144 hours. In fact, let's flip back to the 0Z model and just go all the way out 10 days. That is the 10-day forecast on chances of over 6. But if I drop it down to 3, you now start to see more of the planes coming into this action, which we just need to be very well aware of. All right. Now, the second thing I want to do is let's just go back to this one. I'm just going to go to agweather.com. I'd like to go to weather models, and let's just look purely at the GFS solution on this. I don't have it integrated into my new forecasting system, so we're just going to run the old maps. By the way, when we do introduce the new forecasting system, you will also get these maps as well. So we're not taking those away. We're just going to supplement it with those new vector graphics. Okay, here it is. Here is the GFS through Friday, getting into Saturday. Now this is when we got to watch. Saturday night, there it is. That's now early Sunday. Well, that's really Saturday night to Sunday morning. You can see how much more aggressive this model is with that frontal boundary and the return of overrunning air right over the front to deliver the heavier snow. So the GFS in this case is the outlier. And just to be consistent, we can come back over here and say, well, show me the GFS ensemble. We'll go ahead and we'll use the 6E run, that's fine. And we'll look at the probability of 1 inch. So that's what we're keeping an eye on right in through there. All right. Now, the other side of this is, if we just go back, I would like to know how robust of a solution in the models that low is on the 22nd through the 25th. So if you don't mind, I'm going to play this through pretty quickly. What are you watching? You're watching all 51 members of the European ensemble predicting where low pressure will be. So this is Friday's low going through the Great Lakes. We see that then intensify there. And look, here's high pressure behind it. There's the next clipper. See it coming right in through here. This is really well, I think, predicted by the models. But here we are, the 19th, 20th. There's the antecedent cold air. That's all the high pressure coming in. And then what we're going to watch, here it is. This is the 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd. Now, what I'm keeping an eye on is any sort of Lee cyclogenesis. And you can start to see the models are tossing out lows here. But I'd like to make an important point about this. I think whatever we get into this section of the country is more born on the high pressure here and the high pressure that's already there, and the flow around that high pressure, okay, which is doing this. It's going to be putting what we call a deformation zone in the atmosphere, and that's what this next system might go through on. So it may not look like a true big, deep low, but instead it's the result of the squeeze on the atmosphere. And you will see the pressure drop. Can you see it? In fact, maybe it's easier if I just show you the member, show you this one, the contour forecast. Excuse me, not the contour, but the average. So let's get you back out there to see it. So there's just a broad area of low pressure forming in this region because of the high pressure on either side putting that squeeze right in that area. So that's what we know about that system. By the way, since we're looking at these member low pressures, I do want to show you that if you come back over to these specific, take a look at this. That is an interesting little feature. And I'm going to tell you, if we go into El Nino this summer, this Eastern Pacific is going to become a hotbed for tropical cyclone activity. So keep a close eye on that. All right, let's just finish this with some talk about probabilities of total precipitation. And I'm playing out for you a forecast through the weekend into early next week. I'm going to pause this out there about 1 week from now on who has the best chance at getting, this is crazy, at least a ½ inch of total precipitation. This is the probability of staying, we got all new model runs in here while I was doing this. This is the probability over the next 7 days of staying under a ½ inch of total liquid equivalent. It's extremely, extremely dry pattern. But if we're going to see something erode here as we approach, again, the 22nd through the 25th, you start to see that all eroding in this area, and that's where that potential system is going to go through. But as I play you all the way out 10 days, I just want to make a note that when we figure out who's missing this, it's going to be the Southwest, and it's going to be parts of the Southern Plains getting back into New Mexico. That still keeps the highest chance of staying under 1/10 of total precipitation in this pattern. And that is because there is no true subtropical jets flow in this. It's just coming around the base of a trough that's doing something like that and getting squeezed between two high pressure centers. So it's kind of a faux winter storm, if you will, in terms of its true potential. All right, so that then gets us to just have another look at it and understand the ensembles as they predict where that feature is going to go. Because right now, you can see the best chances in all the models for the wettest conditions will be where we get that deformation zone setting up, which is right in through here. So that's the week 2 probability on getting good amount of precipitation. All right, let's flip the script over to talking about the impacts. I made this graphic for my report yesterday, and I just wanted to show that with that system coming through and then what we expect to see in February, if there's going to be an area of improvement, I think it's here. I'm worried about the drought deepening here and there, but some of the snowmelt we saw lately has improved soil moisture in a few key areas. So this is why we're going to keep an eye on this next system. Temperature-wise, this is nuts. You ready for this? This is, zoom out just a hair here. Well, that's too much, Eric. There we go. This is temperature anomalies every 6 hours. So this is the Arctic blast we're going to be watching Saturday to Sunday. That's what's going to set us up with the chance for snow here. And then here comes the next one. Now remember, this is all way ahead of the big bush. This is on the 19th. Then you have this taking shape on the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th, and 26th. And if you take note, we're looking at the chance for some of this really Arctic air to get all the way down into Texas. Now these numbers are anomalies. So 36 is 36 degrees colder than the historical average at that point. If we do just go have a quick look at what the model's suggesting on 2-meter temperatures at that point, give this a chance to load here. There we go. We'll get to see just how cold some of this air might be as we get it down here into Texas. So I'm going to play this quickly because I just want to get down there and see that one shot. So I apologize if I was flashing pretty quickly. But here we go. There's the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th. There it is. I see some single digits here in Amarillo. And 32 degrees, getting pretty far south into, near Austin, down to San Antonio. Pretty chilly air. And that's what I've got as you get out there to the 26th. So we'll have to watch to see how this modifies. But just to be clear, at that same time frame, we're looking at temperatures around Rhinelander of minus 24. The Quad Cities at minus 9. Some very, very cold air coming in with this. And I just want to prove to you that there is ensemble support for it. Here's your next 5 days. That's day 5 through 10. and this is day 10 through 15. All right. Now, just one thing to note, that orientation with such mild air here is still reflecting what's going on with La Nina. We haven't reoriented this completely yet, which we could do in the third part of winter. But what I wanted to take a look at is, what is the assessment here according to the Climate Prediction Center on these risks? Because from the 22nd to the 28th, let's zoom that back out, sorry, we do have the risk of, moderate risk of extreme cold air and then slight risk across a broader region. In terms of heavy precip, they've also identified this region, which we saw in the ensembles forecast, the risk of heavy snow during that time frame across this northern tier of the U.S., again, the 22nd to the 28th. And again, the west is very, very windy. So I like these all hazards maps by the Climate Prediction Center. So I mentioned February, and I just want to show you the newest European model forecast of February. It's got drier risks here, but this is desperately needed. We've got to bring up the moisture in this region, and we could see a return toward very active conditions in the Pacific Northwest as well. But there's a lot of factors that have to go into making this happen. And if you want to see this pattern unfold, I think it's important that the newest global wind oscillation did not do as it was predicted earlier in the week, which is to come back up here above that zero line. It's now forecast to stay south of it, or below it, I'm sorry. And I think the reason I say that is because this still means that La Nina's got a bit of a grip on the jet stream pattern. And what will be important to watch is when the momentum here begins to shift. Now, what am I focusing on? That is the lack, of the subtropical jet in the northern hemisphere. When that goes over to these warmer colors, we're in business in terms of cranking out late winter, early spring storm systems. That's what we're going to watch. But in the near term, a lot of the focus is going to be on the MJO, which all of the subsidence that's happening out of the Indian Ocean and in toward what we call the maritime continent seems to be driving things. What I'm watching most carefully is as we get into the end of the month, do we start to see a little MJO phase 1, 2 showing up here? Because the European model says, hey, over the next 5 days, we're in phase 6. Day 5 to 10, we start to move over into phase 7. Day 10 through 15, we're over here in phase 8, then eventually phase 1 and 2. There's a movement in the MJO doing something like this. And we've talked about it all week, but I'm just going to show you again. That's a ridge here now, which we've got. We then see this, possible, got these out of order here. Well, no, you got this ridge here now as we go to 5, 6, 7, and 8, or 6, 7, and 8, okay? And then 1, 2 reorients everything. Gets that flow coming back through. And there's just a chance we might get there at some point, seeing something like this. The Hofmuller diagrams show it. So what I mean is, from now through the 24th, 25th, see this? That's western U.S. ridge. That's northeast Pacific ridge. This is trough. This lives in the east. You kind of see how they're lined up vertically. Now, what happens at the end of the month when we think this transition could happen? Look, the models are showing the return of some sort of trough here with ridging there. So that's the possibility in this pattern. Okay, one last thing to talk about. I just want to give you a brief update on South America. The models are getting pretty aggressive on total rainfall through the next 15 days. In a pretty narrow corridor here. And this is where we're going to start to do quite a bit of harvest. And when I start to see model estimations of 9 to 10 inches, 11 to 12 inches near like Mato Grosso, Goiás, northern Mato Grosso do Sul, and then farther to the east, it's something to concern ourselves with. A lot of southern Brazil is going to be drier than average, but into Argentina, some rains are trying to fill in some of those drier spots I mentioned in Buenos Aires over toward Cordoba. Models are putting out 1 to 3 inches of rainfall, so we need to just continue to pay attention to that. Why is because of this. I just want to show you. I showed it to you at the beginning of the week. Let's do it again. When you mask Brazil for only agricultural areas, right now the NDVI is still at record high. If I compare that to a year ago, or even the year before that, even let's go back to 2022, I just want to show you how high we are compared to recently. Let's take Brazil off, though, and put Argentina on. Now, get yourself oriented here. That's where we currently are. And last year was higher. The year before that was definitely lower. Last year was lower. 2023 to 2024 was higher. But 2022 to 23 was the bottom. So we're just sitting a hair above average on the NDVI in Argentina. Just another point to look at. And lastly, this morning I was just kind of poking around at some international weather. And I did take note that the October, November, December in China, according to some of our data sets like CHIRPS, was very wet on the headwaters of a couple major river systems, including the Yangtze. And I went out looking just because I wanted to at what that maybe did. And so in December, I just found this fascinating. So the Yangtze comes in north of Shanghai. There's another huge river, I have forgotten its name, that comes into the south of it. But look at all of this picked up on satellite. The silt coming out into the Yellow Sea, for example. Just fascinating. And as I was poking around here, I also wanted to point this out. If I come over to India, as I just walked through the last several days, you just start looking here at the end of December, mid-December, at just how low the air quality is through the Ganges River Valley. And I can just keep going forward in days, and you just see very, very, look at this dense low cloud mixed in with quite a bit of pollution in this area. Just fascinating to be able to look at these views of Earth with such high resolution. Again, where are we? We're at the end of December and the beginning of January. If I even take you all the way out here to where we've just been lately, here's the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th. This is yesterday. Just, again, major air quality issues in this region, and I think it's fascinating to kind of look at it. All right, that's all I've got. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I'm going to go give a talk to the folks at Grow West. I'm very excited to meet them and learn from them, and then I'll be home late tonight. Talk to you tomorrow. Thanks.